Welcome to another episode of the Career Keynotes podcast with Tincup and Gardiner, where William and Andrew chop it up with respected Silicon Valley talent acquisition and HR leaders to get the real story behind their career journeys, along with an insider's view of how companies engage with candidates. Let's face it, these days, finding the job, much less nailing down an interview, is not easy. This is a rare opportunity to learn firsthand what companies are looking for in a candidate and the best ways to engage with them. And now, here are William and Andrew.
Okay, and we're live. Welcome back, everybody. I missed you. Hi, producer Bev. Hi, William. And welcome, special guest. I won't say your name yet because I want to introduce you. They can't see you yet. I'm very excited. Well, let me back up. Welcome to the show. Glad you're here. I'm kind of sad no one sent me an email yet or asked me a question on what you want to hear or see. So if you're out there and you're listening and you're watching and you have a special request or a question or some feedback, perhaps, we're all interested to hear it because the whole goal is to make an impact. Okay, so I'm very excited about today's guest. I've known him for not long enough. He's a very learned, capable talent acquisition practitioner. And without further ado, I would like to welcome you, Kevin Lenahan, to the show.
Hey, thank you. Great to be here. Very excited to chat with you guys.
Right on. Okay, so, Kevin, we talked before we went live about the show and the purpose of the show. And as you know, I'm very fond of you. So rather than me tell everybody how much I like you and how smart you are, it would probably be helpful if you took a couple of minutes and just gave us at a high level who Kevin Lenahan is and what you're all about.
Yeah, sure. High level, I grew up moving around quite a bit. Most of my upbringing was actually out in Hawaii, which was pretty awesome. I tell everybody I got to hit retirement before I ever had to work. And what brought me out here to what we call the mainland was I came out here for school and was focused just on business, not really knowing quite what I wanted to do. I thought I was going to go into advertising or marketing. I was kind of drawn to those areas, those classes in business school. I went to University of San Francisco and graduated there and was actually recruited into a recruiting company. I think kind of a similar story to a lot of other folks. I started out in the agency world, really where I was able to cut my teeth and learn the ins and outs of recruiting, specifically focused on technical IT areas. I spent a couple of years there kind of honing that craft, learning the ins and outs of talking to candidates and smile and dial, as they always said in the agency world. And, from there moved actually into in-house where, what I call was getting my lucky break was, getting an opportunity to go in and work at Google. This was some time ago when they were on I feel like it was the initial stages of the big hiring that they were doing where they were, hiring all kinds of agency and sales folks, anybody who, knew how to pick up a phone, smile and dial, they were bringing them in. So I was part of that cohort, focused on SRE, keeping google.com up and running, which was a really cool area for me to focus on because, all of the guys that we wanted to find did not want to be found by Google. They wanted to be down, hiding in their caves, keeping everybody's systems up and running. So it was an amazing experience. I got to meet such a great group of folks that we all stay in touch with to this day, and really taught me, going a little bit deeper, going really deep into searches. Again, finding those people that didn't want to be found. I worked there for a few years and decided that I really wanted to have a larger impact and, go somewhere where, I could be more impactful. I could work on things outside of just this one area that I was focused on at Google. And that kind of began my journey into the startup world, and really diving in and learning the ins and outs of what it takes to build a company, what it takes to, build and breathe culture into each hire that you're finding. You know, a lot of that was already established at Google, so I got to just ride the coattails of everybody else's work. You know, and it was easy. You know, for a lot of folks would respond to those Google outreaches, right? You know, the hard ones that you really wanted, they wouldn't, and you'd have to keep hounding them. But there was a lot of other folks that were really excited about that opportunity. You go into the startup world and, you know, hey, you're not Google anymore. You know, you have to really claw and fight and find really crafty ways to get in touch with folks. And I really enjoyed doing that and you know, expanding outside of just, you know, a single kind of focused role. So I was able to work at a couple of really great companies, you know, help build them, learn more about myself and what I wanted to do and the impact that I wanted to create, and you know, have just really continued that journey through a couple of really great companies that have done well and you know, have given me opportunities to grow my career. So part of kind of moving out of Google, going into the startup world was expanding that role. And I think that kind of turned into what I really wanted to do personally was just continue to push myself to learn. You know, I've always been big on learning. I've always, you know, was my dad's right-hand man for projects all growing up and, you know, fixing, breaking computers. I built my first computer from scratch when I was like 13 with my dad. So I kind of had that technical, you know, inquisitiveness from the beginning, but I was always wanting to learn and working in those startups gave you that opportunity to learn, to push yourself. And with that came opportunities if you performed well, opportunities for the advancement. Also have a big background in sports. So I was a soccer player, runner, growing up in Hawaii, avid surfer. So I really was always focused on the team and teamwork and coaching and mentoring and, you know, seeing everybody else be successful. And that gave me the opportunities to move into different types of management roles and to help mentor and guide folks, which was, gave me a lot of joy in seeing other folks do well as well. And, you know, I've kind of just taken that one step at a time as the opportunities have showed themselves. I've been able to really push myself to learn and get uncomfortable. And, you know, over time, this has been able to build up my network and allow me to really get to where I am today, which is, you know, a really exciting and grateful journey that I've been on. Yes, questions.
So we've heard the story a few times of, you know, when you started in the agency world. The thing that I'd like to ask you is, even to this day, if you could boil it all that experience down to one thing that still sticks with you today, what is that?
You know, I think I happened to be going through the agency world and was, you know, did well in a recruiter role. And as you do well in a recruiter role, you set a lot of meetings at the agencies. They want you to go become an account manager. So I was like, oh, cool. I'm going to be out on the road. They're going to give me a car allowance. I can get an upgrade. Sweet. And I went that route. And it just so happens that was also during the Great Recession. So I was trying to sell contingent staffing when everyone else was locking stuff down. And which in turn, you know, put us in a really tough place and put that company in a tough place. I think we all were back then.
Yeah.
And, you know, in the end, it actually turned into the fact that I moved to another agency, went back to the restaurant that I was worked at in college up in San Francisco, answering phones and taking pizza orders, really to make ends meet. And, you know, that experience of grit and determination and not letting anything get in the way of just continuing to push forward, you know, being able to overcome that really set the foundation for anything else that comes up down the road. I've been through that, you know, and I can go back there and I'm not scared to go back there, you know, and that's what I know in my core. All else fails, I can go back to that. And I will make it work. And I think that's something that has stuck with me, and just, you know, you keep it in the back of your head, you know, whatever happens, I got that there and I'll go back to it if I need to.
Wow, dude. I mean, I don't know where to start. One of the things that I've always admired about you, Kevin, is, and I'd forgotten that you had that agency background or those roots. And I agree with you. that because there's that old expression, those who can do, those who can't teach, and those who can't teach administer. And I don't believe that anymore. But many of the most successful people I know in recruiting or talent acquisition have strong agency roots, because it is tape the phone to your hand. You can't sit down till you sell it. And then making the transition to being an account manager and then being on the hustle when everyone's shuttering up, that's not easy. And I think that speaks to why you've been so successful, because you've come up through the ranks. You've eaten the dog food. You have achieved this. And I know you're terrible at receiving compliments, so I'm going to give you one anyways. That's one of the reasons that you're successful, Kevin, is because you know what you're doing. You're confident in your ability. You've achieved success at every level, and then here you are. And that's as it should be. And it's got to be gratifying. Okay, so enough flattery. So looking back, you used the word uncomfortable, and I love that, because I don't like feeling uncomfortable. I tend to shy away from it. That being said, now that I'm aware of it, and as I hear myself say it, um, as I look back, the biggest growth and the biggest, successes in my life were born out of discomfort. So pain, and I'm using the term loosely, whatever, but stretching my boundaries or my comfort level has really almost always resulted in more growth, more success, more progress. So, but looking back over the trajectory of your journey, what you said, grit and determination and stick-to-itiveness, anything else that you would attribute your success to? Anything you do differently?
I think, if I could go back, and I think you and I have discussed this before, I think throughout that journey, I was incredibly fortunate that I had great mentors and folks that I, latched onto. I found my winners, folks that were doing well, that could guide me, that understood me, and that I wanted to emulate. And, as I've grown into a people manager and have had teams, I've looked to them continuously for advice, but I wanted to, act as they did and find the value in folks the way they found the value in me. Because it took a long time to build confidence and to feel really comfortable in what I was doing, and to think that I was good enough at what I was doing. And it still is for me personally. I'm not afraid to admit that. I think it's still a challenge. And part of that's helped me on that journey is again, finding the winners and folks that have encouraging and positive news and are reflective on things that you've done, and are able to articulate that back to you in ways that it really resonates, and you can build that confidence. I wish that I could go back at my former self. I mean, I wouldn't change anything, right? Otherwise I wouldn't be here. But you like to say that, we like to talk in that way. I wish I could go back and say, man, be more confident, be more comfortable in yourself, talk up more, say things that folks want to hear it. You and I've spoken about that before, Andrew, is that letting that stuff out where you feel insecure or uncomfortable in saying something, I think is one of the biggest shortcomings that you're doing to yourself, is that you need to let that out, because there's a learning opportunity there. Whether that's, you directly learning or somebody else learning from it. So, I think those are things that I still stick to and still force myself. I'm here on this podcast, right? Not not the most comfortable thing for me either, being up in front of
I'm proud of you, bro. You're killing it. And I appreciate the Brene Brown always says, Kevin, and you're right. I'm the same way you are. I'm not much, but I'm all I think about. I appreciate your vulnerability. It's vulnerability and authenticity is the first thing we want from other people, and it's the last thing. And what's really, frankly, very moving for me and compelling listeners, audience, is you look at Kevin, he's this strapping, handsome, successful, buff guy, and he's like, yeah, I don't really feel really good about it. It's like, that's so cool, dude, because I can engage with that, right? Whereas if you're like, oh, dude, hand me that piano, that's a little harder for me to engage with because I don't feel okay. I'm going to let someone else ask a question. Producer Bev looks like she's chomping at the bit.
Well, I did like the fact that your dad tapped you to be his co-pilot on so many projects, and that opened up your curious mind. I think that's lovely. My other question is about Hawaii. I've been a couple times, and it has a distinctly different pace and mindset. What do you see as the biggest contrast between working in Hawaii and working in the States, the other states?
Good
Well,
question, Producer Bev.
I haven't done professional work out in Hawaii. I've been here longer than I was living there, so I wouldn't know exactly about working in a professional environment there. But I think we're all aware of that pace difference, right, that you have out in Hawaii, which I think is also important for they have it figured out. They know what's important to them. I think we forget that here. We're in the rat race. We're rushing through everything, looking for that next big accomplishment, which is never enough, and we're just constantly chasing. So, I think I lean on that vibe. My brother's actually back there. I just talked to him yesterday, and and he's, there's you kind of go back to your hierarchy of needs. And then it changes when you're in an environment like Hawaii versus here. So for me personally, it's great to go back there, and I go back to my roots. The food's amazing, obviously the surf. Surfing without a wetsuit's lovely. But then I also miss the pace though. Coming back here is that I do think it stretches you a bit more out here than you may have the opportunities, at least in tech, back home in Hawaii. So. I think those are some of the main differences I see.
That was a great question, Bev. It's just lovely to understand pace because, especially I think there's a book I read where they broke America into 11 different regions and how different regions kind of go about business. And it's interesting to think about pace. Like, we've all interacted with somebody for always lived in Manhattan, and it's a very quick conversation, as opposed to when I went to the University of Alabama. Conversations are like it's like South America. You might take 3 hours to get to business. You're going to talk about family. You're going to talk about these things. And all of a sudden you might get around to business, but it'll take you 3 hours. The question I have for you is actually two-pronged. You can answer one or the other or both. And it's the largest career mistake and what did you learn? And/or your riskiest move and what you learned.
Ooh,
And I'll tell you one of mine. So while you're formulating that, I was offered a job at the time. I was working for a company that was built by Walmart, and I had the route. I could go work for Sam's, or I could go work for Walmart proper. And if it were Walmart proper, I could either go to Midland and run a store in Midland, Texas, or I could run a store in Hilton Head, South Carolina. Biggest regret is that I didn't take the job in Hilton Head, South Carolina, because I'm a Texan, so of course I know Texas really well, and Midland was easy. I should have pushed myself and taken a job in Hilton Head, and potentially been a professional golfer after that. But anyhow, that was my biggest kind of mistake, is I should have pushed myself. So, what's yours?
Yeah. I think I would probably lean more towards, the big, taking a bigger risk, is what comes to mind for me, and stepping out of a comfortable situation. And that was, my most recent move, was leaving a 6,000 plus person organization, where, I'd been there for, almost 7 years. So it was established, had a good routine, great team, knew everybody, knew the ins and outs. And packing all that up to move to a, at the time, less than 30 person startup, and just going for it and taking the risk and having long conversations with the wife, and putting some notes together, and saying, what, it's now. This is the time, this is the place. And so far it's been, again, goes into one of the better decisions, if not one of the best decisions, because it's been, nothing but intense growth and uncomfortableness, like we talked about. But it's been a blast. Yeah, it's interesting. I have to think about the regret. I'm kind of working on, not looking back and seeing anything as regretful, right? It's all the journey. But yeah, I
It's
can't think of
interesting.
any company that, kind of went huge that I missed out on the opportunity.
Yeah. That's Guy Kawasaki's bit. Whenever you see him talk, is he didn't take the job at Yahoo back in the day, but back before Google, because it was an hour commute, and they calculated that he lost like $1.7 billion on just turning down that job because he didn't want to do the commute. It's like, okay, I don't have any of those, but I did appreciate that you didn't go down the route that I thought you'd go down, where when you left Google, which anything after Google has to have some level of risk to it. But I actually appreciate that it's your most current one, and especially the way that you've got a team, everything's comfortable, and now you're going to go and upset the apple cart and try it all over again. So a really, really great answer. Andrew?
Thanks, William. Kevin, I'm never not amazed at your answers and your modesty. And I heard a better one on humility. Remember, I said humility isn't thinking less of yourself; it's thinking of yourself less. Someone said, and producer Bev, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's humility is when you say it to yourself. Humiliation is, I may have it when someone else says it to you. I may have it, but anyways, you're very humble. That's my point. And I'd love to go, because William, you made a good point. You always make a good point. But going back to Google, you left Google, Kevin. I'd forgotten about Google. It's like, oh my God. And that's not insignificant. And then your commentary around the giant company that you were very successful at, which is, I had the pleasure of meeting you there, very well respected, venerable, to your point, and knew the drill, had a lay of the land, didn't, and you took this risk, but you perceived as a risk. And from my perception, it was like, are you kidding me, bro? It's like Batman, the thing in the sky went on, and it's like, why wouldn't you go get the bad guy or whatever? And I'm so proud of you, because it lets me know. And by the way, I have my own stuff with that. It's all relative, and it's all, again, we're all in our own heads. But I'm so proud sounds, it's not, of course I'm proud of you, but I mean admiring of you, and not surprised by the reward and the benefits. And knowing you as I do, I'm not pandering to the guests audience, but Kevin works hard at what he does, whatever it is. Doesn't matter if it's surfing, being a dad, being a TA, or HR leader, whatever he's doing, he's bringing there will be no work left to be done. Kevin's
Well, Andrew, just in building a new team, to go into a company that under 30 employees ish, and going, from something that's established, all the people, all the personalities, the chemistry, you understand the technology landscape, you got process, and then all of a sudden you got to go to something else, and it's a big giant wipe off board. And so that to me, that speaks volumes of that chapter of your career is really interesting. Anyhow, Andrew, you were
no, and but you're right, William. And then, but look at him now. Now, and then to your point, Kevin, regrets are kind of like, well, there's not. I have a friend that always says you can never have a better past, but you can always have a better future. And there is no future in the past. So that sounds really easy. And Kevin, you and I have talked about it. Actually, I've talked and you've listened. I wish I listened. I'm working on my listening, people. Okay, so we're well into this, and I want to pivot. And now's a great time to pivot because you touched on an interesting point. There's a lot of controversy around, not controversy, but a lot of conversation around. It used to be my dad worked at Macy's for 40 years, and that was it. And then you join a company, you're going to be there, and how can I keep them, employee retention? Now, I forget what the studies are. William, maybe you know, or Kevin, you probably know. Shoot, producer Bev knows. But now it's like 2 years or 2.5 years. And so two things, Kevin. One, what are your thoughts around that? What's your experience? And then do you have an opinion on it or a strategy I'm kind of pivoting now, and now we're going to focus on, we're going to put our, Kevin, you've interviewed thousands of people, and I would love saying this, you're going to forget more about how companies engage with candidates in the next 2 minutes than Bev and I will ever know. Maybe not. Well, definitely me, maybe not producer Bev and maybe not William, but you know a lot about it. So we're going to start going down that track, but let's kick it off with your thoughts around, I'm hearing people, I heard Steve Cadigan say, listen, now companies are, hey, I know you're only going to be here for 2.5 years, so I'm going to make it the best 2.5 years of your life so that when you leave here, and you are going to leave, you're going to say nothing but good things. So what are your thoughts around that, Kevin?
I think, I think being in the, in the TA and HR space, we're all, we're all aware that everything relies on our employees, and that they are what make a company. I think it's, we have to, and me specifically, I think of, how are we going to deliver the best at whatever we're doing in that moment? So personally, I'm not thinking too far about when this candidate or employee's coming in about, am I going to get a year, 2.5 years out of them? I think, and maybe this is reflective of kind of where I'm at with, this startup where we're small and we're thinking, let's get through this year, right? Let's get through our next round of funding. And with previous companies, we would think a little bit more about tenure, but we had more resources to be able to plan around that, and we could build that into models. So, my thought and how I like to approach it with my team currently is, how do we provide the best experience, whether that's in the interview process or when you are an employee? And I know that that's super broad and vague to say, but I think what we've done and how we approach it, though, is similar topics that we've talked about here in this podcast, is being authentic and genuine and being transparent. Those are the things that folks are going to remember. Candidates are going to remember. I had a candidate that I brought into my last company who reached out to me and says, I just saw that you had moved companies. I wasn't even aware. We're obviously a big organization. But I remember 7 years ago when we had our first talk together. I don't know if you've interviewed thousands of people, but I really remember it, and are you guys hiring over there? And there was enough of an experience, and I haven't talked to him in a long time. But he remembered that. So, approaching things, being genuine, being authentic, like you said, in everything that we do, putting your best foot forward, and giving your all, I think is the most critical piece. Because in the end, I think if you overthink kind of how long you're going to have someone, there's family stuff that comes up, COVID comes up, there's a million different reasons, but the here and the now of how you can treat people, that's what's going to create an impact. And, and I'll feel good about it later on when I get these small little pieces of feedback, whether it's the interview process or, the current employee who said, wow, I can't believe you responded, within 2 hours. I wasn't expecting to hear from you in a couple of days. And here you are, and we're on a call, and we're solving this. It's like, well, hey, I want to treat you how you want to be, how I would want to be treated.
So, oh my God.
Genius.
I'm curious. Hold on. I need to
go ahead.
Okay, I'm just
Not too sappy there for you.
No, Dude,
The Kleenex.
that's the whole point, to dispel like you're an angel,
right.
like you're a saint. And but because there's a perception, it's like, oh, here's the resume.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Darth Vader's on the other side of
Yeah,
his.
exactly. But no,
Oh, we can go into
Kevin
that.
Lenahan, watch your freaking LinkedIn blow up now, Smiley.
So one of the things one of my questions usually involves a magic wand. So I'm going to give
Yeah.
you a magic wand. It's actually a pen, but it's a magic wand, and it's related to candidates and the relationship with hiring managers. And you've worked with, at this point, probably thousands of hiring managers. What would you change about hiring managers and the way that they interact with candidates? And you could change anything because you have a magic wand.
I think, whether it's hiring managers or interviewers, I think we could lump them in together. I wish that they would consistently remember when they were on the other side and have that front and center when they're interviewing and talking to folks. I think I've seen this in multiple companies where, the expectations for someone that I'm interviewing is to be where I am at now. And forgetting that 6 months, a year ago, I was just getting started. I had to learn a lot of stuff on the job. So I think if we could instill that and find a way to just ground all of them to remember that and be cognizant of it, I think that would be, you would nail your candidate experience scores, right? And I think it would just be a great process, and I think we'd have a lot of better outcomes as well.
It's a good use of the magic wand. Okay, Kevin, I'm going to go right after it now. So, Kevin, there's a lot of people listening. 10, 15 million tops. But for the people that are listening, maybe they're new to the job market, or they're, like you said, very openly and honestly, you said, hey man, I had this other sweet gig, but maybe there was more, but I just didn't. I always say, hey, being good at getting a job isn't something you want to be good at, right? It's like being good at dating. Don't want to be good at dating, you just want a girlfriend. So I want from you, Mr. Open, authentic, honest, and vulnerable, what are some really practical, pragmatic? One of the things I'm going to do, audience, I'm going to do a little vignette on what my number one thing is. I think the biggest reason, the number one mistake people make, in fact, respond to this, please. The number one mistake I think people make when applying for a job, and the reason they don't get contacted or the response that they desire, is they're applying to the wrong job. In other words, I don't think they have their story straight, whatever their story is. Maybe they're just posting indiscriminately, and it's hard. It's a poorly written job description to a poorly written LinkedIn profile, and there's ambiguity. It's just the nature of the beast. But what are some really pragmatic?
Andrew, real quick. You've actually unlocked something that both of you have talked about so far. Only thing I'd add to that is candidates tend not to express their passion about the job, and that leaves you vulnerable, right? So if you literally say, I really, really want this job, like my life will change because working with the company, values, all of that bit, that's all vulnerability.
Yep.
And I think that's, to your point, that's one of the things I see as well. It's yes, they're applying to the wrong jobs, but even when they're applying to the right job, they don't go far enough, and they don't go into the next place. Now, Kevin will tell us what we have right and wrong.
Go.
Yeah, I think, just expanding on that, I being open and being honest, I think is absolutely critical, and showing your intent around what you're doing and why you're doing it. I think those are important. I think candidates, they and I'm guilty of this myself. I get into my own head. I want to give you what I think you want to hear.
Right.
Do this double reverse thinking. I think I know the answer that you want, and that ends up happening in split second. You've gone through a gazillion different thoughts while you're in an interview process, it's only been 2 seconds, but you feel like that pause has been forever. So now you're sweating and you're thinking about that, right? All of these things that go on, and they forget that they can just talk about it. I think you're asking me about this. They forget to ask clarifying questions, or I think you want me to go this direction, and they forget to just have a conversation around it. You don't have to be perfect. All candidates are envisioning that a hiring manager or interviewer wants a perfect answer, and they've already got it figured out in their head, and they forget that the journey to the end is really what's more important. And I think if everyone could just take a step back, take a deep breath, and go, all right, let's try and have a conversation and solve it. And again, I'm the guiltiest one on all of these counts, right? Even in this, right? I'm trying not to go, oh, what's the greatest answer I can provide to this question? I'm like, just spit out whatever you're thinking.
Dude,
And here it
that's
goes.
beautiful. And William, your point was extremely well, everything you guys just said, because so the thing I think is, like, if you don't know what you want, or you're not sure about your want, because to your point, Kevin, maybe I'm thinking, well, I want to say what I think he wants to hear. So if it comes out, it's going to come across as kind of ambiguous or uncertain or a little murky, because I'm just what you said. I paused and I'm like, well, I think I'm going to, because it's that old expression, I'm not who you think I am. I'm not who I think I am. I'm who I think you think I am. And it's like, wait a minute, man, what was the question again? So then you're just gone. So, and then to your point, William, it's like, okay, so if I really express what I want and I don't get, and they think I'm, not fit, then I'm lose. So I project something that's not.
I think there's a kind of a dark underbelly to vulnerability is for candidates is they think that it comes across as desperate.
Yes.
Right. And I don't think it's desperation. If you're really, really passionate and you really, really put yourself out there, I don't think that's desperation. But I think it's been put in candidates' minds that's what it comes across like. And I to all the talent acquisition folks that I know and HR folks that I know, they're like, I want someone that's passionate. Just please give me passion. I'll teach them the other stuff. Just give me someone that's passionate.
Yeah.
You want to ask the HR question or the TA question?
Yeah, I actually just have one more, and then I'll let you close it out, William, and then we can do that. Kevin, I would love for you to respond to this. In my mind, or you too, William, and producer Bev. Producer Bev just texted me and said, "Never mistake kindness for weakness." Thank you, producer Bev. In my mind, if I'm an employer, and I am going to, in my opinion, willingness, desire, and potential trumps knowledge and expertise every time, or almost every time, in my opinion, unless we're doing like nuclear brain surgery or something like that. So Kevin, what's your thought on that? And William or producer Bev? But while you're thinking of your answer, I was talking, a guy called me today. He owns an ad agency, and he's having trouble finding graphic designers. And I told him what I thought was the, Nirvana Pythagorean theorem solution. He goes, well, 9 times out of 10 might agree with you, but I'm doing these brochures for Salesforce, and I need someone that knows what they're doing. I don't care how willing they are. Either I got to train them or they got to know. So I was like, okay, duly noted. So anyways, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. There's certain roles, right? If it's any type of a developer in a specific language, well, we kind of might need that language. However, what's relatable, and are we having conversations about what is relatable language or something else? I think we do get lost, and we have to shake it up with our hiring teams to make sure that they do think of the potential. And our hiring systems, though, are set up, our resume review systems are set up in a flawed way, right? We crave these top degrees. We crave, specific big company experience, and we still need to unlock the ability to find and appropriately bring in, this great talent. I think everyone in our industry, we talk about this on the diversity push.
All right.
But No one's solved that, and it's been going on since forever. So I don't have this.
Yeah.
I don't have this great
Plato
answer,
wrote about it. Yeah.
but
It's going on since forever.
since
Good
forever.
one.
Yeah. But I think that just what you said is, how do we find the way to actively go after the potential, and the willingness and the eagerness, and find other ways that we can have certain systems built up within companies that can help fix what we think is the problem. It's not necessarily the problem, but we kind of have to fix what we think might be any shortcomings in some area.
I think it's for me. I think it's really interesting just in the last couple of years how recruiters and HR. It was kind of, and probably still is in some places, a game of skills and competencies and experience, and that's where they stopped. And I think now it's really interesting because it's transcended. It's like, okay, yeah, you got to be capable. Okay, yes, you have to have skills. Okay, fair enough. All that soft skills and hard skills, you got to have that. And then they want to look at, and then they should look at potentiality and look at desire and passion and all these other things. But it's we're all watching talent acquisition evolve right in front of us,
Right.
which I think is fascinating. So the last question I have is, again, you've interviewed X number of people through your entire career so far. What are some of your candidate turnoffs? As you've kind of looked back and there's just certain things that you just, it's either something that you don't like or just candidate behaviors or their follow-up or whatever. What are turnoffs for you?
I think any candidate that, is two-faced in how they're interacting with folks, that if you're treating my, a recruiter on my team or a coordinator, in a way that I don't like, if you're not showing respect, or to myself, in the interview process, or putting a pecking order of how much value, that I can actually see, that you're changing face when you're in front of a hiring manager and exec. I mean, that stuff, I will bring that up very quickly to hiring managers, so anybody that's playing that game, stop it, because that stuff's going to get out there. So that's one of the biggest ones that I think I run into and that I advise on my team, is that, because I think there's also recruiters and folks within the TA ops process, right, that don't bring that up or don't feel that that's their place to. And I always want to enable them and say, I need to know this, because that is a huge indicator of things that are going to happen. That's a yellow flag that'll turn into a red flag later.
Good answer. Okay, producer Bab, do you have a last question?
Oops, you're on mute, Bev.
I was pushing the space bar. I guess it didn't take. Okay. So everybody likes money. I like money. Everybody likes it. But what is your juiciest non-monetary incentive when you're talking to candidates? What lights people up?
Ooh, look at Bev digging down deep.
Juiciest non-money incentive. I mean, I feel like a lot of stuff goes back to money. I think, benefits, right? I think it's money, but it's not necessarily money that right into your pocket, or it can be, right? And we pitch it as such when a company has a great program that offers benefits. I think obviously that's gone up with everything that's happened here in the last year and a half. But I think that can oftentimes be overlooked, and depending on what kind of a candidate. So, I think benefits, and into that benefits is the different options of wellness things. And I think companies can show really great focus on their employees, number one, with the benefit package and making that strong, but number two, with the other additional things of wellness. An example I can give you is, we're setting up mindfulness classes.
Nice.
Where it's on the calendar during the workday, with a high level of backing, that go take the break.
Good for you.
And just enjoy that part, step away a little bit. So I think things along those lines are huge.
That was a really good answer, my friend. And to your point about extending it beyond not just, you say benefits, people think medical, dental, But benefits could be vacation time, looking after yourself. By the way, listeners, Kevin's a professional surfer. He's going to tell us he's not, but it's part of his modesty. But we'll talk about that on the next episode. Okay, big man. Well, so we're at that part of the show where we get to tag and release you. In a minute, we'll ask people how they can get in touch with you. But do you have, everybody lean in, do you have poor, I can't even say it in Spanish, by chance, a kind of a embarrassing, silly interviewing story? Can be anonymous. Don't want to, it's all anonymous. Don't want to hurt anybody's feelings or embarrass anybody, but anything like, oh my God, I can't believe that. We told you about a couple before the show. And if you don't have anything, I'm happy to dip into my bag and I've got, as you know, a deep, rich bag. Okay, I'll just tell one while you're thinking of it, unless you have one. Do you have one?
No, tell me
Okay.
one. I'm racking my brain here.
So this was really not an interviewing thing. This was more of a firing thing. I was working at an ice cream parlor called Edie's. It was kind of like a high level Baskins and Robbins, let's say. And they had I was a what do you call the guys at a soda jerk? I was a soda jerk. And so I had discovered nitrous oxide, which, as you know, is the gas that they use to suppress the whipped cream. And I discovered, so I was in the back room making sure all the whipped cream canisters were working properly. And I passed out. Got to the point where I could do almost three in a breath. Anyways, I passed out. And well, let's just say when I came to, they weren't very happy with me and they unceremoniously let me go. And this was a long time ago. This was like 3 weeks ago. Okay, I'm kidding. Okay, so do you have that gives you a lot of wiggle room to go.
Oh man, yeah, you went really far with that one. Nitrous in the back room there. Were you in the fridge? Were you in like the
I was in the
dangerous, man.
It was dangerous. I am, as you know, I was not famous for my judgment back then. And it really was. I would say it's a long time ago and it was 3 weeks, but I've got a million of them, but I was just buying time for you. I want to hear yours, or we could just go right to how people can get in touch with you. I'm sure that left the audience with enough of a.
Oh man, I want to just throw one out there, and I'm just drawing a blank on them right now.
That's good though. That lets us know that you've never had. I mean, that you're such a stand-up guy, and the way you handle yourself on this podcast and in your interviews, and in the way you handle yourself is. I mean, I'm not surprised. And that's okay. So listen. This has been more than I could have hoped for, Kevin. I'm really grateful for you taking the time to do this. I did have to, he wasn't, and first of all, he's really a busy guy, number one, and number two, he's not a big self-promoter. And I'm just really grateful, Kevin, that you took the time and the energy to do this. I will jam you up with one last thing. You can only say one thing to all the listeners. What's your one, like, okay, if nothing else, remember this. And it can be to the candidates. It could be to the people that want to be heads of HR. What's your one key takeaway that you think would really serve people well if they just thought or did or remembered this?
Just be kind and take care of each other. It's as easy as that. If we can all do that, we're gonna crush it.
I love it.
It's the lessons of the movie Roadhouse. Be nice. That's it. Done. Just be nice until it's time to not be nice.
I love it. And that's a great place. We'll tap out there. Okay. I'd like to thank producer Bev. I'd like to thank William, and I'd especially like to thank you, Kevin Lenahan, for creating time and space for this to happen. Kevin, how do people get in touch with you? Whoops, sorry about that, everybody. How do people get in touch with you if they want to connect with you offline?
Yeah, I think LinkedIn.com/K Lenahan is probably the best. I'm not super active social media guy, but my LinkedIn is a great way to find me, and let's connect.
All right, right on. We'll leave it there. Okay, everybody, like and subscribe. I am open to suggestions and feedback. I can't wait for our first Ask William and Andrew email. And Kevin, don't you do it just because you know how insecure I am. Okay. All right, everybody. What's oh, thanks.
Ask tincupandgardner@gmail.com.
Well, thanks.
We'll talk about your topic.
Thank you.
Thanks,
so much,
everybody.
everyone.
Have a great week and bye.
Thanks for watching this episode of Career Keynotes. For more killer content, please like and subscribe to our channel. We welcome all comments and questions and are grateful for any input regarding future content, topics, and guests. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode.